I found the disruptive out of a lack thereof, out of not being able to work at one of the bigger firms. After interning at one of the bigger firms and giving my game plan, they told me no. They laughed at me basically. So
Mm,
disruptive is a place of growth. It's here to change the game, and it will change the game through technology, the representation space. So whether they let me in now or one day, hopefully, I buy them or acquire them, it will happen. So
Welcome to the Raw Facts podcast, everyone. I'm your host and producer, Ben Arthur, joined by NFL agent Henry Organ. This is an episode I'm really looking forward to. Henry is someone I've gotten to know over the last couple years. Being as I'm an NFL reporter, he's an agent. We've kind of come across each other, but I first came across him on Twitter. You know, when you see a black agent, first of all, you don't see all that many of them, and then to see one like Henry who actually co-founded an agency, I think that's even rarer. So he's someone I have a lot of respect for. We're going to kind of discuss his journey and whatnot, and he also has a book coming out that I want to make sure we bring a spotlight to. But Henry, thanks so much for coming on. How's everything going with you?
everything's great, man. I appreciate you having me as one of your guests on your podcast, and looking forward to it, man. I mean, just like yourself, there's not many, at least black people in media, let alone sports media, that you see consumer facing at a lot of the events that we go to. There is a lot of you guys, but being a little bit arrogant, not being in your space directly, did not know that there was as many black journalists as there was. So
For
you,
sure.
Cam Wolf, and some other guys, and just hearing your guys' stories. So, yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course, and with you, Henry, I kind of want to start from the beginning because I think your backstory is pretty interesting. I know you grew up in the Bay, but from actually doing quite a bit of research on you, I know that you come from a family of like black excellence. A lot of family members who've kind of gone through the Ivy League, doctors and whatnot. It's kind of coming from a family like that and being black as well. I guess maybe how did that shape you and your perspective coming up in the Bay Area?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Claude Oregon was my grandfather. My great great grandfather is Henry Pemberton, who founded one of the first schools, I believe, for blacks to attend, black high schools for them to attend in Texas. I'm not the best at the history, but The Color Purple, they were featured in that movie as well. So, and then on my mom's side, my grandpa Ed Devine, he moved out to the Bay Area, and he came from a lot of black accents as well, and he bought a lot of real estate. He was one of the first black
Mhm.
executives prior to that at IBM as an engineer. So it's black excellence is everywhere around us. A lot of the times we just don't see it and people don't talk about it because it's frowned upon or it's looked down upon. It's just in the era that I grew up in, and now it's somewhat turning the corner again in a good way. So for me, I just feel like it shaped me just to believe I can do anything I set my mind to. Nobody's better than me. And if they are, you gotta better stay up all night because I'm trying to figure out how to beat you.
Okay. And Henry, being an agent, because I know you play football, right? You walked on at Portland State. You were a DB there. How did you go from being a football player yourself to wanting to represent guys? When did that switch happen? And how did that transition take place? What inspired you to become an
I
agent?
think that a lot of things, the mind, stuff is done to you subconsciously, right? So I grew up with Aaron Goodwin, his daughter, in middle school from like first grade. And I remember when he first signed LeBron James, and LeBron James got this $100 million deal. And I remember him pulling up in a Hummer, it looked just like the one that was in the paper at the time LeBron had. And I think those things were just very subconscious. I never talked to him, never really understood what he did until I got a little bit older. For me, really turning the corner, going from working at Nike football and doing production, doing some different jobs, what turned it for me was one of my friends made the league, and this was post college. I had stopped playing my third year, and he was looking at me like I was rich because I bought a like a $300,000 house with 5% down, and I was looking at him like he was stupid because I knew that he had a good amount of money and he didn't own a house. And it was just merely he just was never taught that. He was never taught to own your own and how to do that. And um, that friend ended up going broke 2 years after he finished playing. And like, I remember just sitting down with him talking, and we just had like a heart to heart. And people know I'm very direct and I'm very blunt and I'm very straight to it at times, but there's a soft side to me. I feel like, or at least I like to think. And I just asked, like, what happened? Like, what could you have done different? Like, what are some things that you think happened? And he's like, honestly, just this conversation. If you would have been my agent, I probably wouldn't have went broke. These things wouldn't have happened. And that just like hit home. For me, I've always loved to make money. I've always loved to inspire and help people reach their full potential ever since I was young. But I had never figured out what my purpose was. I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. I knew I wanted to own real estate, but it wasn't like my full time thing. I didn't want to be a realtor. And I felt like it was my calling. I got called to be an agent. And so that's when I decided to really indulge and look back on what I was doing and how a lot of the things, different things intersected, and how I could really change and help advance and close the gap we have in society today between the rich and the poor.
And Henry, that story you mentioned with that friend of yours, and I think that touches so much on the theme of like financial literacy, right? And when these guys, the guys you represent, maybe don't come from a background where they have a lot of financial education, and then they get into the NFL, sign a big contract, what have you. They're in a position to really take care of their family, and having financial literacy is so important. And I've read a lot on you,
Mhm.
and financial being able to educate your clients on financial security and being able to build wealth is so kind of important for you. I guess being in kind of the NFL space, representing NFL players, I guess how common is it for you to see guys who, um, they've been in the NFL and that they have an agent, but they still don't maybe really understand how to build wealth for themselves, and maybe how have you tried to bridge that gap with you with kind of how you
Yeah,
go
that's a
about your
great
business.
question. You said this is the raw facts. This is the podcast, so we're gonna talk real. I think even in some of those interviews that I previously had, I've been branded as this financial guy, and it's not even about that necessarily. It's about showing young people of color what it looks like to be financially stable and live within your means, and how to just properly budget. Like, I think that a lot of agents, predominantly in the past, they haven't been just over the history of it, they haven't been black agents that have been highlighted up until really Rich Paul that and Eugene Parker, but have shown their lifestyle, how they're living, and what some of their core practices are, and their principles are, and how they do it. So I think that that's hard to see because it's everybody competes. The statistics are 78% of players, NFL players, go broke 2 years after they finish playing.
Mm,
But the statistics are failing to go more in depth. How many of those players are black and Polynesian men? They have the statistics, but you haven't maybe gotten them. It's probably,
yeah,
upwards of 90%. And that's what the
yeah,
league is. So when you really look at like a locker room of 53-man active roster, how many of those players go broke? At least 70%, right? That's what the statistics say. 78%. That's a lot. And I think it really
yeah.
stems just going more in depth. It's not really financial literacy, it's just owning your own. Do you own a house? A lot of guys, get pushed on to buy a house when they finish playing, but like when you finish playing, now you have no income, so now you can't qualify for the loan. Or
Mm,
you never had credit because you were paying for everything with cash, and now you have no credit. And even if you do want to buy a house while you're playing, the bank is telling you no. There's loopholes to that. There's ways around that. It's just it's I like to call it navigating the matrix, but it's leveling up. You're in that new income tax bracket. You got to put yourself around people that are making that kind of money. And I think a lot of times that I'm a fiduciary, a financial advisor's fiduciary, right? But the people around these guys, they're trying to get these guys to do investment deals or whatever it may be such. They have money, but they're not fiduciaries. So players get lured into doing bad deals or deals that are not truly beneficial for them, thinking that they're being taught and they're not. It's a very, very slippery, fine slope of people that are trying to help and people that are trying to take advantage or somewhat help, but ultimately take advantage for themselves. So I just think that the objective is to help these players, maximize their potential on the field. It's the sport that they're playing first, football first, for me at least. And they need to figure out how to be the best at that. And when you come out of college, you're somewhat institutionalized, and in the off season going to training. But how much extra work are you putting in? Because in the off season, most guys don't stay at the club facility to train. So how are you budgeting to pay for training? It's not going to be free. The good people that do it well aren't doing it for free. How much money are you spending on your body? How are you allocating for when you retire? How are you going to have cash flow? Like really asking those tough questions, not the pipe dream of, oh, I know these guys, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, they're going to give me a job after, because they're not. They're not.
Mm.
It's the real, right?
Hmm.
The Titans GM, right? He was cold. I've read his story a little bit about how he went in and interviewed or did his 30-day visits and was telling guys he wanted to be a GM or in the front office one day, from my understanding of it. It's like he was sharp. He knew what he wanted to do when he finished. But how many players really do that? Very, very few. Or get those opportunities to do that at all.
Yeah. So Henry, is that kind of when you're pitching? Because when you're competing for guys to represent you, you're going up against the CAAs
Mhm.
or Athletes First or Clutch Sports or whatever it is. I mean, we all know kind of the name brand big agencies, particularly with the NFL. When you're pitching to these guys to represent them, is that kind of what your pitch is, or is it part of your pitch that you're going to really work with them to kind of understand all those things and really set them up? Because obviously you hope to maybe be one of those big agencies with Disruptive Sports down the line, but kind of with where you're at right now competing against those big names, is that kind of your pitch to guys like, look, I'm going to help you understand
I mean,
this?
no, it's not, because their pitch is the same, right? And they have more clients, so they have more,
Mm.
possibility for their clients to do what we're talking about. That's not my pitch. Typically, I just go in with myself, of who I am, my upbringing, and I break down the game plan for them, my game plan, which is sometimes different. Most of the time, it's just different. That's not what I'm selling. I'm not selling the same thing they're selling. I feel like the player is attracted to me for who I am. I feel like every agency attracts a certain type of player, right? I attract a different type of player, in my personal opinion. Somebody that can think for themselves, somebody that's a maverick, somebody that is a hard worker and is an executor. So right now, I currently represent the underdog, but that won't be forever. So I think for me, I look at myself like a Nike. The movie Air is out, so people are starting to read Shoe Dog and learn a lot more about how Nike started. And that's how I look at myself. One client away from being the dominant player in the game. I don't think it's a matter of goal is to be one of them. No, I look to dominate. I don't think that any of those athletic brand companies ever dominated as much as Nike has and is right now. So I think it's timing. Without giving the whole pitch away, I think it's purely just the objective is hey, I just have less guys right now. I have more attention to detail. I have a great staff behind me. I'm not a one man show. I have a team of six. I'm
Mm.
equipped with the same exact skills and weapons that these bigger agencies are as well.
Henry, I kind of want to touch more on your agency, right? Disruptive Sports Agency. I guess maybe kind of going off of what you're saying, what was maybe the inspiration to wanting to have your own agency? Because you could have just joined a big agency, right? And kind of be an agent through one of those and still kind of have your messaging come across. But instead, you co-founded this agency. It's 100% minority
Mhm.
owned. And to my understanding, you started it during the
Yes, sir.
pandemic too. So I guess what was kind of the push to internally to want to
Yeah,
start
and I want to
that?
be clear. Those agencies are not hiring blacks. They're not. I tried. They didn't hire. Right? There's I said there's one or two token black agents at every single agency there, but no, they don't hire black agents, and that's a bunch of BS. Because if that was the case, I would be working there when I was my start.
Mm.
So I found Disruptive and the naming of it we'll get into later, but I found the disruptive out of a lack thereof, out of not being able to work at one of the bigger firms. After interning at one of the bigger firms and giving my game plan, they told me no. They laughed at me basically. So
Mm,
disruptive is a place of growth. It's here to change the game, and it will change the game through technology, the representation space. So whether they let me in now or one day, hopefully, I buy them or acquire them, it will happen. So um, I think that that's the misconception. A lot of these people, promoting, you know, Black Lives Matter, but put your money where your mouth is. If 90% of your clients are black men and only 10% of your staff are black people, you have a discrepancy. So
yeah.
I found it disruptive and named it disruptive because a lot of people were talking, a lot of people were marching, but their agents are still white. The point of Black Power is to matriculate that dollar within our own communities with people that look like us. That's not happening. So talk is cheap, marching is cheap if you're not putting your mouth and your dollar, if you're not putting your dollar where your mouth is. That's why I started disrupting, was to
Mm.
attract those players that really were trying to make a change and were willing to, push a hard line to get better. And there's nothing against my counterparts because they do a great job. Athletes First does a great job. SEA does a great job. Clutch does a great job. They do. They've negotiated some of the best deals and contracts there. They have. There's no debating that. It's just not. You can't debate that. I respect all of them, and they don't necessarily respect me, and that's fine. But I think that through this, we have to, as players, as coaches, if you want there to be change, well, then you have to uplift people that are trying to do it and make a change because you can't do it alone. You have to have an advocate that looks like you, that speaks like you, that's looking to make a change, right? Our black journalists, you guys are advocates for us agents, for us players. You see a different perspective. And that's not to say that our brothers that are different colors aren't advocates for us. They are, but it's just, we have to own our own. If we don't own our own, we're just workers.
Going off of that, Henry, and kind of saying how that these some of these big agencies maybe have these token black folk, and you tried to kind of get in right, and kind of with your vision and whatnot, and you were turned
Mhm.
away. I guess I wanted to expand upon that. I mean, being a black agent, right, in a space like the NFL, we know how it's a black dominated league, right, in terms of player population and whatnot. But there aren't a lot of black agents. There are even fewer young black agents such as yourself, and you're going up against these older white, predominantly white men who've kind of had a monopoly of sorts over this space since the inception of agents,
Yep.
right? In terms of dealing
Yep.
with this. So I guess what kind of challenges have been presented to you because of that as you try to recruit guys or as you try to negotiate maybe, and what are those experiences that you feel are unique to you because you are a younger black agent trying to make your name
Yeah,
in
yeah.
this
And I'll
space?
say this, there's a lot of black agents, right? They are. You just don't see them consumer facing. You
Mm,
just haven't seen. There's a lot of great black agents that are out there that, for whatever reason, are under the radar or, don't like to talk to the media or aren't out there like that. They are, and they have some great practices, some great businesses. Maybe it's not in the media. They're afraid of it, or how they were trained back in the day was, don't do media because it can be frowned upon at times. Which that's fine. That's okay. I don't think that. I mean, everything under the sun, as far as challenges, they come that way. That I mean, well, I mean, I've heard lines even as corny as, "Hey, you see what I look like? I'm white. What do you think the guy looks like across the table?" Which is true, but I don't feel like that's an inhibitor of preventing to get a deal done. If you want a player, you want a player. The player's good and has a market. You got to talk to me. You know what I mean? If you have the
mm,
product, there is a need. So I just feel like blackball and all that stuff is. people try to do that. I've seen it, but we still win. You know, doesn't really matter as long as you have a good product, a good player, and you know your leverage, and you understand that hey, going into that, there could be some biases towards you, and you explain that to the client, and you break it down of what your game plan is. I think a lot of the times the thing that we know as black men is we always have to be twice as good and to work twice as hard. So some agents don't have to present what the game plan is going into a second contract. I do, and that's fine because I'm raising the level of expectation of what we're going to do to get the deal done. I'm raising the bar on myself
Mm,
too, which can be scary. So you got to be extremely detailed, extremely meticulous to get it done.
mm. And Henry, to my knowledge, the biggest contract you've negotiated was Kendrick Bourne's a couple years ago, the 3 year, what, 22 million dollar deal with the New England
Mhm.
Patriots. Negotiating that deal, what did that moment maybe mean for you? I mean, you're a guy who's kind of tried to hustle in this industry, as you've said. You've kind of gotten turned down, maybe at these other big places. You kind of started your own thing in the pandemic, trying to make your way up, and then to get a deal like that, which I know
Well,
isn't going to be the end for you, but to what did that symbolize for
well, I
you,
think
being an
to me,
agent?
it just I thought it would. For me, it was expected in my mind. Some people didn't think that it was going to go as that, but I expected it from the standpoint of I knew the player, I knew the product that I had worked diligently on it, and it's kind of funny because I was basically like the Black Jerry Maguire. All of my clients fired me before that, and this was the last one in my first year. So I negotiated a second deal before I had a draft pick, and I don't know any other black agents in the past 5 6 years that have done that. So for me, um, it just gave me validation to understand, hey, you can do this. um, I don't think it was to me. I just didn't really, I kind of keep going. I have big goals, so it was an accomplishment, and I was very proud of the company, and I was very proud of the player for doing, listening and trusting my guidance to get him paid. But like you said, it's not the end all be all. I mean, I could give you a whole elaborate how it's so great and how it's so amazing, but hey, we still face roadblocks the next year. The next year, I still missed on some top draft picks, even though I had gotten a player
Mm.
paid, because in this business, it takes time to build credibility, So I think there's a lot more work that still has to be done. And, I'm looking to get Kendrick paid again. I'm looking to have a big year this year. We have Devin Asiasi coming up for a second contract after this season. We have Kendrick Bourne, who had a down year last year, and I'm expecting him to have a good year in last year of his contract. And we have Samori Toure, who was our first draft pick at the agency, and I'm looking for him to have a big year as well.
And Henry, when you can, and I want to go back to Kendrick for a second. When you like, you can negotiate this deal, but when you go to the player and tell them, look, you have this incredible deal on the table that could potentially change their life, right? Like I I I guess I'm curious, like, what is
What
that like being an
process
agent?
is you're basically asking? The process is
Yeah.
after, first off, in the beginning of the season, prior to going into free agency, the whole objective as an agent is to manage expectations. Hey, and it was a very, very hard year. It was a COVID year. We didn't know what the salary cap was. We knew we were going to get shortage, but not how much. So it was hard to gauge, throughout the year what this player ballpark range was, right? And as we came down to it, hey, Ken, these are the things you need to do to be in the $5 to $10 million range. Here are the things you need to be in the $10 to $20 million range, and just broke that down. Then, hey, based on the salary cap, we're projecting, a decrease in what that number should be based on these statistics. Hey, and then at the end of the season, instantly, hey, here's the recap. Here's what you did well this year. Here's how you match up in free agency against these players. Here's who has previously gotten paid that is similar to how you are compared to. And here's kind of the ballpark of what we're shooting for. You know, we're gonna let the market dictate, but here is the ballpark of what we're expecting. And then, hey, what are your expectations? What would you like? And you have to manage those expectations. If he says I want $20 million a year, hey, you should fire him today because you're not going to get that. That's not based on your production, your statistics. That's highly unlikely. It's just
Mm.
managing those expectations, and just full through on through and continuing to talk to the team that the players on and making sure that they want him back and what their price is. So, going into free agency, hey, this is we have if in this first wave, we're expecting you to be a first wave player based on the feedback we've gotten from different teams at the combine. You go in the second wave, hey, we're looking at this. Third wave, we're in trouble. So you're breaking that down, you're explaining what we expect, what players in the market. Kind of like how the draft goes and Mel Kiper goes best available, right? Same thing. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of doing it now as far as best free agents available, but as agents, we look at, okay, this player is compared to you. What is he getting paid? Did he get paid? Are we going to jump out there before he gets paid and take his money or set the market?
Mm.
And being in constant contact with the NFLPA, which is a great job of giving you the insight of, hey, this deal just came through, it hasn't been announced yet. Here's what you should be shooting for. So utilizing your resources, not being a know-it-all. I think that a lot of times there's a misconception that agents do everything on their own. No, we don't. The PA helps us, right?
Mm.
They govern us, and if we do a bad deal, we get in trouble. So um, there is a safety net
Got
to
it.
some degree, but you
Okay.
have to know your stuff, and you have to have good relationships with different people.
Henry, from the outside, we hear so much about how unemotional like the negotiating process could be, right? Like we hear of instances where there's a player who maybe represents themselves and there's kind of they're realizing kind of how unemotional it can all be, like when there's kind of a lot of emotion involved, like when you're the player, you're the one going out there practicing, playing your tail off, and then you kind of get this blunt feedback in terms of like what a team is going to offer you because of uh, injuries or what have you. I guess being kind of that third party as an agent, I guess what is that like for you going back and forth with in an NFL front office and what is that? I guess I'm asking like what is that process like for
I
you?
mean, every team is different. I think that you have to manage expectations, right? Under promise, over deliver. So you have your floor
Mm.
and you have your ceiling, and sometimes the ceiling can be higher than what you expect, and you have to create deals that are win-win, right? That's the main thing, is creating deals that both parties win. The player wins and the club wins, right? When one side wins too much, well, the other side isn't happy, and then bad things happen down the road as far as the player getting cut. So I think that just it's not being emotionless, but just understand this is a business, and just be very direct, and hopefully they'll be very direct back with you. And I think that people don't understand the process is, typically as a general manager, right? There is your contract negotiator. So, from in my experience at least, typically you and the GM kind of put together the deal. The person that's standing or acting as a GM put together the deal of what they're thinking, prior, what numbers they're kind of thinking, ballpark, kind of get some framework. And then when you get to the contract negotiator, it's much more dialed and detailed of exactly what they want, how that money's structured. That's where it becomes a big deal, especially depending on the state you're in and the taxes that are owed. That's where's the player
Yeah.
actually seeing his pocket. Some agents really don't care about that. They talk about it, but they don't really care. They don't have a pro forma sheet of saying this player goes to, Arizona, how much does he make after taxes? Based on their previous game schedule and the states that they play in, what is his actual take home pay?
Mm.
When is that signing bonus being paid out? How does that team typically pay out signing bonuses? So it's coming to the table equipped with the knowledge of the teams you're negotiating with and having an understanding of the market. It's truly an art. It is an art.
Mm.
It's not just negotiating. It's not like, it's just an art as far as just knowing it's just a lot of information. It's an information focused business.
Henry, I wanted to kind of discuss
Mhm.
your book too. I know you have a book coming out. It is called The Informational Interview Playbook: Creating a Path to Achieve Your Goals.
Mhm.
Um, what inspired you to write this book, put it
Yeah.
together, and what are you hoping that people get
Yeah. Now
from
I'm
it?
being emotional because now I'm not an agent. The book, first of all, has nothing to do with being an agent. The book has to
Mm.
do with being that young kid in high school or in undergrad or graduate school trying to figure out what you want to do, right? We all have been there, and especially in this day and era where people hit you up on LinkedIn or DM you on IG or somehow get your email and email you. I think that I learned this in college and undergrad, especially working in Nike, because they're very big on networking, is an informational interview. I would hit people up, hey man, I want to learn your job. Just being young, not really knowing the undergrad, like what am I supposed to say? I would love to do what you do. I want to any job where you work at, like trying to be hungry and show that. But like, there's an art to that. Like, people don't. Desperation is not always rewarded. So it's figuring out how do you network. It's fun. It's the book is how to conduct information interview, how to even ask one. It gives you the full blueprint from how to ask it to how to create a board of mentors to how to follow up with those people that you did information interviews with and get jobs from them later on or potentially hire them. So for me, I still personally do 2 information interviews a week, 2 that I give and 2 that I get, and that's how you expand your network. And a lot of the
Mm.
things that I do to this day, even in meeting you, was just off of hitting people up. Hey man, would love to just connect with you and learn more about what you do and see how I can help you in any way possible. Like, just would love to connect with 2 people. Hey man, you do a great job at this. Want to learn how you got to where you're at, right? Just be curious. But it's the book on how to be curious, how to make people see themselves in you and want to help you. That's the biggest thing. So I think a lot of people, the best information you can get is typically not out of a book. It's directly from the person working the job. Like, if I want to become, if I want to, go into sports media, hey, I'm gonna hit up Ben. Hey Ben, would love to take you out to coffee for 15 minutes and just learn how you got to where you're at. Simple. Then as they're talking about where they're from and different things of that sort, excuse me, sorry. And
Bless
just
you.
learn how you got to where you're at. I find common ground with you, things that we have similarities in, right? We all have similarities. Oh, you went to school here. Oh, you played this position of football. Oh, you you love gumbo. Me too. What's your favorite gumbo spot? And just make it personal. Don't make it all about business or work. Does that
Mm.
make sense? That's what the book in a
It
nutshell
does.
covers. I know my publicist is gonna kill me because I didn't do a great job explaining it, but the book is all about networking in school, in undergrad and graduate school, in both programs. I had classes on how to conduct an informational interview. It's basically what it was. It was like career planning to success. Like, that's what the class was titled. I think like it was like level 200 or something like the 201. But there was no actual book that broke down the steps of how to do it. So I took all the information of my personal career of just doing information interviews and what I did learn in school, which was very little, honestly. The stuff that I learned on the fly was much better. And doing over 200
Hmm.
informational interviews in my life year to date, with the first 100 being how I got my first job at Nike and like how to conduct it, how to present yourself. So important.
Mm.
So important. So I just feel like for people of color, like, we don't get taught these things. How do you make nepotism work for you? Well, easy. How
Mm.
do you make nepotism work for you? You got to know the person. How do you get to know the person? Figure out how they got to where they're at. Figure out what they're looking for. Like, what are the things they like in an employee? How did you get your first job? Tell me your story. What are you looking for in this job? So that way, then when you do apply for the job that they're hiring for in 6 months or whatever it may be, that you come to mind for them first for the job. Most job postings that are really good jobs, there you have the person. Whether they say it or not, or whatever HR violations or complaints, whatever, it's all a bunch of BS. I'm not hiring somebody that I don't know, or this somebody I know.
Yeah.
I'm not hiring anybody in my company like that. I can say that now without getting in trouble. Down the road, I'll have HR probably come back and kill me for saying that. But like, that's the facts. I'm not going to hire somebody, pay
Yeah.
somebody a salary to jeopardize my entire business that I don't know. I'm looking to hire assets, not liabilities.
Mm.
That's just the truth.
Mm.
So everybody in the company that I have now, I've known through somebody else, through working with them, or they're credible, or they got referred to me from somebody else, or they did an information interview, right? You know, there's an intern that I had that, ended up working with us and has a full time job. And he's a basketball agent. all off of an informational interview and him knowing one common person and figuring out who that common person was. I listened different. It's the truth.
Mm.
How'd you get your first job? Let's do
Yeah.
information interview on you. How'd you get your first job?
Uh, well, actually, my first job I got from applying to tons and tons and tons of places, but every other job since and every internship I've ever gotten in my life have come because of
Yeah. How'd
relationships
you get
I've had
relationships?
with people. Um, Conventions, reaching out to people for informational, like one person introducing me to someone who introduced me to
Tell me
someone,
about your first
stuff
information
like
interview.
that.
How did it go? Like, what did you ask? How did you hit them up? How did you get in contact with them? Like, how did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, just whether like emailed them like, hey, can we go to Starbucks? Like I want to do what you do. I want to cover the NFL or NBA or whatever it was at that time. And kind of they'd lay it out and we'd have a good rapport and they'd say keep in touch and I
Yep.
would and they would introduce me to someone who would introduce me to someone and
Well, not
yeah,
interview.
that's how.
Well, there's a whole chapter on that. Hey, make sure you ask that person to connect you with two other people. They'd be willing to. Two other people they think they should connect with in your network. That's a referral in
Mm,
itself. You know, that person may never have opened your email if you know Ben hadn't emailed you to connect you with such and such. That's just the reality of life. You know, I vetted this young man or young woman. I think that they're you guys should connect. He's got some questions for you on a piece of your life I know that is personal to you. Where let's say, hey, uh, let's say it's a woman reporter. Hey, I'm not a woman. I can't speak to what it's like being a woman agent. I'm going to refer you to an agent that's a woman. Hey, here are my insights on it, but go to the person that's done what you want to do and seek their advice. That looks like you, talks like you, dresses like you, the closest you possibly can. They can give you the
mm.
best advice because they've done it. Never listen to anybody that hasn't been where you want to go.
Oof, that deserves some snaps
Never.
right there. That's a big
My
one. Yep.
grandfathers taught me that. And
Mm,
sometimes that phrase rubs people the wrong way. But if you're a teacher in university and you haven't done what I want to do, I'm not listening. I'm not. That's how I'm trained. That's how I'm wired. Like I can hear you. I hear you. I'm respecting what you're saying. I'm taking it in, but it's not penetrating my soul and my decision making. You know how many teachers I've had told me don't be an agent? That's stupid. That's dumb. And I'm paying them to teach me?
hmm,
Fuck out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like, have you done it? I remember one of my first class in grad school. I asked my professor because I presented and what I was here for, and I had a whole game plan. I knew the school I picked, why I picked it, what my game plan was when I was applying for my test. I wasn't a regular student. I was 28. I was coming out of corporate America. I had done some things. I talked a little different. I moved with some confidence. They didn't like that. It rubbed them the wrong way. And I remember just him asking me like, why do you want to be an agent? That's stupid. And he like broke it down and like completely embarrassed me in front of my classmates to a degree that like it pissed me off. And so I asked him a question: have you been an agent? He said no. And he started rambling about people that had been agents, and how they hated it and this and that. And I said, but have you done it? And he told me no. I said, so why should I listen to you? I shouldn't listen to you. You haven't done it. I'm here to learn this. I'm not here to learn how to be an agent from you. You haven't done it. So I just said, hey, I'm not hearing what you're saying. I'm not going to listen to what you're saying because you haven't done what I want to do or been where I want to go. If I want to be what you're doing, a teacher that paid $300,000 to get a PhD and teaches and makes $50,000, then I'll call you. And that was very disrespectful, but I didn't like that a teacher that was a different race told me, a young black man, what I couldn't do. Nobody's gonna tell me what I can't do.
mm,
Period. Nobody. That's just how I'm
mm,
raised. So uh, that book has a lot of that energy in there, a lot of that passion. Gotta have that
mm.
dog in you.
I feel it. I like it. I like it, Henry. Folks, all you listening out there, please go ahead and get this book. It's available for pre-order. And my understanding, official launch is June
Yes, sir.
15th for the book. So, guys, please be sure to get out to get Henry's book. I think there's going to be a lot of great stuff in there, some of which he already just touched on. Henry, last question for you before we get out of here. And again, appreciate your time for doing this. I know you got a lot going on, but what's next for you? With where you're at in your career, and knowing your goals and aspirations, what's kind of the next step?
Great question. The next step for me, I think, is just to go out, not think, but the game plan is to go out and get some draft picks this year and be in that space. You know, typically I don't say what I'm going to go do before it's done, but that's the objective. That's the goal. So I'm going to put the energy out there this time around and go get it. I'm going to hold myself to a higher standard than I previously have and go get some draft picks this year. That is my goal this year. And then from there on to expand and build out the technology we've been building for a little while now, which we won't go into detail. Well, that's it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. I like it. Speaking it into existence. I like it. I
what are
like
your
it.
goals for next year?
Folks,
What are
oh,
your
go
goals for
ahead.
next year? For this
What
year,
are
in
my goals?
2024, what are your goals for this year?
I want to be the best NFL features reporter that I could possibly be. I want to dominate this space as a features
Mhm.
reporter, in particular, but also with this podcast. I want to build this up. This is kind of a project I'm doing in the next 2-3 years. I want this to be one of the most respected sports podcasts, like in terms of getting people to tell real, genuine stories about their lives and putting it in their own words. I want to be the best in that space, and so it's kind of like that goal in terms of this project, and then with Fox Sports, which, as many of you guys listening know, that's my day job. Be the best NFL features reporter out there. I love kind of getting to the heart of stories like this that are coming across in this
Yeah,
format, but doing it in the written medium as
I
well.
love it. I
So,
love it. Well, you heard it here first, guys.
yeah,
In 3 years, he's going to be
yeah,
the number one NFL features reporter.
yeah.
Raw,
It's out
raw
there.
facts.
It's
Raw
out there.
facts. You guys,
Yep. That's raw facts right there.
we're all talking trash to
Yes,
him.
sir. Yep. Henry, thanks so much. Guys, appreciate you guys tuning in. New episode next week. But for now, I'll see you guys soon.
Please
All
follow
right.
me on the gram too at him again.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We gotta do the proper shout out
Click
for
the
Henry. Henry, please let people know where they can follow you on Twitter, IG, Facebook, TikTok, whatever you want to plug. This is your chance to do that
It's
now.
Instagram. It's Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, or TikTok. I don't use TikTok. Instagram, Twitter is all the same. Henry, Oregon, or at. Sorry. Oh my God. Let me recut this. Cut. It's at Henry Oregon with two N's at the end. Oregon, ORGANN.
Love it. All right. Thank you, Henry. Appreciate you, man.
brother. You have a blessed one.
Yep.